So I appreciate that I'm probably the only person on the planet that thinks this, but I do have to say that I feel like Dune Part 2 is a little bit overhyped. Now, don't get me wrong, I did really enjoy this film, and there is so much to discuss and break down about it, but I just feel like everybody is describing it being a 10 out of 10 movie and true top tier level, but for me, it's just not quite there. The main two reasons being is that I feel like it was overly artistic in certain places, and I feel that they chose to be style over substance. And also, the transformation of the Paul Atreides character is such a big and monumental moment in the books, and I just feel like they could have and should have just done so much more with it and truly made it heartbreaking for the audience to watch this person being super beloved from an audience perspective and then just suddenly turning into this complete opposite tyrant type person. Now, I do think that they did show the duality of the character from that perspective well, but I just feel like the transformation of the character could have just been focused on so much more. But that being said, you know, it is the mother and the original science fiction creation that has just led to so much imitation being developed in TV and film, and so many franchises and IP have just based so many things from the original book of Dune all those years ago. Most notably, Star Wars, which just borrows so much from Dune. And interestingly, Zack Snyder tried to do that again with his Rebel Moon interpretation of Dune and Star Wars, but obviously not to the same level of success. Now, even though certain moments from my perspective could have and should have just been done so much better, I cannot deny the fact that the A-list cast in this movie truly put their best foot forwards and just created something really, really brilliantly. Of course, this was helped by Denis Villeneuve, who just created the cinematography in this movie in such an epic and spectacular way. But from an acting perspective, they all just did such a good job. Like I said, I wish certain moments were just done a little bit better, but on the whole, I cannot deny the fact that they all just did such a good job. So let's go through them one by one. So first up, of course, Timothee Chalamet, the guy who is just going to be absolutely massive in Hollywood in about 10 years time, just did such a good job with Paul Atreides. And actually, I think it's really easy to criticize this guy, especially based upon the journey that he goes through, but at least at the start, I feel like he's really good, as of course he's this grief-stricken prince who has had to leave everything, his entire world, and is now pretty much on the run with his mother. So, you know, I feel like as a character, you can really resonate with this guy in the beginning. And like I said, Timothée Chalamet just brings Paul Atreides to life in such a good way. And I just loved all of his relationships in the beginning, for example, with Zendaya's Shaney character, and of course with all of them as well. Certain people you can really see very believably from the Fremen perspective. Some people really like him, some people don't really know about him. You can see a lot of people talking about him behind his back, but for the most part they have accepted him because he's effectively on the run and they have taken him in, and certain people, rightly or wrongly, do see him as the Messiah. And I just think his acting was really, really good here, as in certain moments you can be like, look, he wants to really reject that idea, but in other parts he thinks it's quite cool and he does play into it. And I think it was a really good creative decision to kind of leave it open to interpretation as to whether or not he definitively is the Messiah or whether or not he isn't. And even though I wanted that transformation moment to be even more impactful, I think the inner struggle and the inner turmoil that you experience with this guy in the beginning when he's like, look, I just don't want to go to the south because I've had these visions of what can happen in the future, and just the reluctant journey that he kind of feels like he's forced into going through in order to ensure that they all survive, leading to his vision coming true, and then ultimately taking all of these followers onto this holy war, which is going to lead to the death of billions of people. You can just really experience that journey really, really well here. And of course, there's so much social commentary about colonization, about wars, about following people who are coming across as really charismatic leaders, and of course, the dangers and the consequences of this. Like I keep saying, I just wish we could have seen that transformation moment just happening in a bit more of an impactful way. As like I said, you do get to see the before and after really, really well, but I just would have loved that transformation, as he does go from being a really, really nice person that is building this romantic relationship with the Shaney character to being this guy that is ultimately just drunk with power and is just going to cause so many atrocities. I think it's interesting as you can do a bit of a comparison between Timothée Chalamet's Paul Atreides character and Hayden Christensen's Anakin Skywalker character, even though they are very different in terms of Anakin just went onto the dark side. And even in Revenge of the Sith, as much as I loved that movie, again, I would have loved to see that transformation, as I feel like it was just happening way too quickly. But with Paul, it's a lot more complicated, as does he believe his own hype? Is he doing all of this because he can now see the future? And it's also really tragic and really heartbreaking, as the Freeman people are really accepting of him and now they kind of see him as this massive messiah person, and he is just taking full advantage of this and doesn't really care about them anymore, which I think is just such a destructive personality trait that some people have, in terms of just seeing other people as just pawns that you can use and abuse as you wish. Very similarly actually to Brother Blood in season 4 of the Titans' brilliant live action TV series, where you get to see that guy being super nice and being constantly rejected by society, and then when he gets his opportunity to make his dreams come true, but obviously comes at the cost with a demonic evil tone with it, he ultimately then just does give into it. So I feel like that transformational journey, you know, with these type of characters is really fascinating, but like I said, it's really heartbreaking at the same time. I absolutely love Zendaya's portrayal of the Shani character. I feel like she was really, really wicked, as she is not really wanting to believe that Paul is this messiah, and actually does grow to love him. And I think it was really good actually. They spent so much time building that relationship, so that ultimately when Paul does actually choose somebody else, the princess, which is obviously going to be a power-based move, and speak into that time where you marry people purely for power, as opposed to always going with your heart. You can really feel Zendaya's heart breaking in that sequence, as you are as shocked as she is. And I just love the Shani character, as she is just so self-reliant, and now is going down a very different path. And it's going to be interesting, as in the books, she does ultimately marry Paul and she does have his kids. But I wonder if that is going to happen here, or if they're going to go down a very different route. I thought Rebecca Ferguson's character was so fascinating, as she doesn't really have any line that she won't cross, as she is just so determined and focused to get herself back into power and in control and in a position where she is going to be a very important person. And like I said, she has no qualms manipulating and abusing people and ultimately killing people in order to get what she wants. So she is truly terrifying. And another terrifying person is of course Austin Butler's character, who I thought was absolutely tremendous. I feel like the transformation of this guy into this pure psychopath, and you got to see him first in that gladiator match, and he didn't want any support at all, and he wanted it to be a fair fight, and you can just really see how bloodthirsty this guy is and how savage he is in battle as well. So I think it was a long time coming in terms of seeing this guy battling Paul Atreides. I wish that battle would have gone on for a little bit longer, as this was such a big clash, and just seeing these two characters fighting was just so epic and awesome. But like I said, I just wish it would have gone on for a little bit longer. And they are both Harkonian, so that's a really interesting aspect in terms of actually, is this the reason why Paul is just suddenly bringing out his darker, eviler side? I thought it was nice bringing Josh Brolin's character back from the first movie into this one, and even though he is a little bit paternal towards the Shani character, I feel like he does also stab the Freeman people in the back, as he's like, look Paul, you have all of these people that would basically do whatever you want them to do, so you might as well use them. I think Javier Bardem was a true scene stealer. I love the fact that he is just such a big supporter of Paul and really does allow him to just believe his own hype to an extent. Florence Pugh didn't do that much in this movie, but she is very important in the future installment, so I think she is definitely going to be one to watch, and I feel like she just really brought across all of her costumes in a really good way. Similarly, Christopher Walken might not as well have been here because he didn't really bring that much. Dave Bautista's character though I thought was really interesting, as you can see the Harkonian in him, as he is a bit of a savage guy too, but I think it was interesting as his uncle ultimately pitted him against his brother, and I feel like ultimately Austin Butler's character was wiser and a better fighter, so Dave Bautista unfortunately didn't really stand a chance against them. So you know, Dune Part 2 is a really good movie. It is really meaty, so fascinating. You can just get lost in the entire world and just really question all of the different character motives, and I feel like from an English literature perspective there is just so many essays you can write, as like I said, these characters are just so fascinating, and I just cannot wait to see how they're going to take it all forwards in Dune Messiah, as firstly the books has so much rich mythology in there and material for them to use, but also Denis Villeneuve can take it in very different ways, so it's going to be really interesting to see what's going to happen next, and I just cannot wait to see it. But as far as Dune Part 2 is concerned, I do feel like it's a little bit overhyped, and so for all of those reasons, I'm going to give it a solid 7 out of 10. Now I'd love to hear from you. What did you think of Dune Part 2? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video.